It was a normal morning at the factory gate until one police K9 suddenly refused to let a worker inside. At first, everyone thought it was just confusion, but when the dog barked louder and circled tighter, officers knew something was off. The man's bag was searched, his lunchbox ripped open, even his tools inspected, yet the K9 still wouldn't stop. Then, just as the worker stood frozen under suspicion, the dog pulled officers straight toward the factory floor itself. What they uncovered hidden there shocked everyone watching. But here's the question. What secret was buried so deep inside the factory that even a trained worker couldn't explain it? Factories run on routine. Every shift begins with the same sounds of steel doors opening, machines warming up, and workers clocking in. That morning was no different, except for one detail. Standing at the gate was a police K9, its stance tense, eyes fixed on one man approaching the entrance. The worker, a middle-aged man in a faded uniform, looked no different from anyone else. He carried the usual lunchbox, walked the usual pace, and even greeted the guard at the gate with a nod. Yet the K9, normally calm during routine patrols, stiffened the moment he stepped closer. Its fur bristled, tail rigid, and within seconds, it blocked the path completely. The handler tried to ease the tension, tugging gently at the leash, but the dog would not budge. Instead, it lowered its head, teeth bared slightly, and pressed forward with sharp barks. The commotion made other workers pause at the gate. Some whispered, others exchanged nervous glances, wondering why the K9 had locked onto someone they had known for years. The worker froze, confusion spreading across his face. He raised his hands slowly, signaling he had nothing to hide. But the K9 barked louder, circling him, each step deliberate as if it was trying to trap him in place. What was it about him that triggered such a reaction? Security had no choice but to hold the man back. Factory supervisors rushed to the scene, demanding answers. The dog's handler crouched down, studying his partner's behavior. This was not random. A trained K9 does not act without reason. The man's lunchbox was the first target. Officers asked him to hand it over. He hesitated for a split second, long enough for the dog to lunge, pawing at the metal container. When it was finally opened, the inside showed nothing more than a sandwich in a small thermos, perfectly ordinary. Or at least that's what it seemed. Yet the K9 didn't stop. It shoved its nose deeper, pawing furiously, barking with even greater urgency. The sandwich was pulled apart, the thermos opened, and still nothing unusual appeared. Why then was the dog so insistent? The man grew visibly uneasy under the crowd's gaze. His co-workers whispered, was he hiding something, or was the dog simply mistaken? The supervisors debated whether to let him in. Machines inside the factory were already running, orders piling up, and delaying workers would cost valuable time. But the K9's refusal could not be ignored. The handler suggested a full search. Officers escorted the man away from the gate and moved him toward a side office. His lunchbox was sent for further inspection, his pockets emptied, and even his shoes removed. Nothing. Everything came back clear. But the K9 still barked, still circled, still refused to let the man cross that line into the factory. Something was not adding up. Questions began to rise. Could there be something inside the factory itself that the dog was sensing? Was it about the worker, or about where he was heading? The handler tightened his grip, watching closely as the K9 shifted its focus, not to the man's body this time, but to the bag slung over his shoulder. The bag appeared ordinary, filled with gloves, protective goggles, and a small wrench kit used daily on the machines. Still, the K9's body stiffened the moment the zipper was pulled. The dog pawed at the bag aggressively, claws scratching against the fabric, nose pushing inside as if something critical was hidden within. The wrench kit was pulled out piece by piece, nothing strange. The goggles were clear, the gloves worn and dusty. Yet at the very bottom of the bag, under the lining, there was a faint bulge that had not been noticed before. An officer cut through the seam carefully. Inside, folded tightly, was a small package wrapped in layers of tape. The man's face turned pale as the package hit the table. The K9 barked louder than ever, teeth bared, refusing to calm. But when the tape was carefully sliced open, the contents left everyone speechless. It was not drugs, not explosives, not anything the officers had braced themselves to find. Instead, it appeared to be papers, old, crumpled, with faint markings across them. Why would a worker smuggle documents into a factory? The crowd outside grew restless as word spread of the discovery. Whispers turned to speculation. Was this industrial espionage? Was the man stealing secrets or bringing something dangerous inside? The supervisors looked unsettled. The worker, still silent, avoided everyone's eyes. His posture, once confident, now slumped under suspicion. Yet nothing had been proven. The papers were still sealed in evidence bags, waiting to be reviewed. And still the K9 barked. Not just at the papers, not just at the bag, but again at the man himself, circling, pressing close as if the real danger had not yet been uncovered. What was this dog sensing that no one else could? The handler, growing more concerned, suggested moving beyond the worker. The dog should be allowed to inspect the factory itself, starting at the gate where it first blocked the man. Supervisors hesitated, but the persistence of the K9 could not be ignored. As the dog stepped past the threshold, it pulled hard, dragging the handler toward the main entrance of the factory floor. Workers inside paused their tasks, staring as the team entered. The dog's nose pressed low to the ground, then up toward the lockers, then finally toward one specific section of machinery. It barked again, louder, stronger, sharper. The machines were immediately shut down. Officers moved in, flashlights scanning every corner. Workers were ushered away, and in the tense silence that followed, the sound of the K9's claws scratching against steel echoed through the factory walls. Something was hidden there, something no one had expected. And as officers prepared to cut through the machinery casing, the unease grew heavier. Was it connected to the worker? To the papers? To something larger no one had yet pieced together? The crowd waited outside in silence. Supervisors exchanged worried glances, and the worker, head down, breathing shallow, knew that whatever was inside that machine would reveal the truth. But what truth? The factory floor had fallen into silence, the usual hum of machines replaced by the heavy tension of waiting. All eyes were fixed on the officers as they circled the machine the K9 had clawed at. The handler gave a signal, and the dog sat at attention, ears pricked forward, eyes locked on the steel casing. It would not move. Supervisors exchanged nervous glances. That particular machine had been in use for years, never malfunctioning, never drawing suspicion. It was the core of the assembly line, built to handle thousands of parts daily. But now, with the K9's warning, it looked less like a tool of industry and more like a sealed box holding something dangerous. The officers brought in equipment, forcing open the side panels. A sharp metallic clang echoed through the room as the casing was pried apart. Dust puffed into the air, followed by the faint smell of oil. Workers leaned in from behind the barriers, anxious but fearful. At first there was nothing unusual, just gears, belts, and mechanical wiring. But as one officer's flashlight swept deeper inside, it caught on something that did not belong. Wedged behind the inner framework was a small compartment, deliberately hidden. The dog barked again, pressing forward as the handler struggled to hold it back. The compartment was pulled out piece by piece, until finally a sealed container was lifted into the open. The K9's growls grew sharper, body trembling with intensity. Whatever was inside, it was what the dog had been pushing everyone toward. The container was placed carefully on a cleared workbench. Security officers gathered close, cutting through the seals while keeping a safe distance. The worker, standing under guard, could not look away. His hands fidgeted, his breathing uneven. The final latch was snapped open. Inside were more documents, dozens of them, far older than the first batch. Yellowed papers, diagrams, handwritten notes, all of it bundled together in layers of protective wrapping. But these were not simple work notes or factory records. One officer spread the papers gently, and the markings became clearer. They were blueprints, detailed designs of the very machines used inside the factory. Notes scribbled in the margins indicated modifications, weaknesses, and alternate uses. Some pages even carried government seals suggesting the documents were never meant to leave official hands. The realization hit quickly. These were restricted, classified designs. The factory floor erupted in whispers. Workers looked around at one another in disbelief. Who could have planted something like this inside the very machines they worked on daily? And why was this one worker the focus of it all? The K9 wasn't finished. It tugged hard on the leash again, nose pressing toward the documents. Officers examined them more closely, flipping through page after page until one detail made the room fall silent. Between two of the folded sheets was a small, thin envelope. It had no markings, no label, only a faint trace of dust. When opened, a single photograph slipped out. The picture showed the factory gates, but not as they appeared today. This was an old photograph, grainy, black and white. Standing at the gate in the picture was a man in uniform. A man who looked strikingly similar to the worker now under guard. Gasps spread through the crowd. Could it be him? Was this some long-standing connection that no one knew about? Or was it simply a relative, someone tied to a forgotten piece of history? The worker finally spoke, his voice low but trembling. He admitted that the man in the photograph was his father, who had once worked at the same factory decades earlier. According to him, his father had uncovered irregularities during his time, unsafe modifications to machines, secret documents passed between higher-ups, but had never been able to prove anything. Before his passing, he left behind some of the documents, hidden inside old belongings. The worker confessed he had found them recently while clearing his father's things. Unsure of what to do, he carried them daily, fearing they might expose something dangerous. But someone else must have known he had them, because when officers compared the documents found in his bag with those hidden in the machine, they realized they belonged to the same collection. The real mystery deepened. Who had planted the additional documents inside the machine? And why was the worker carrying the rest with him? The K9, restless still, pulled once more, this time toward the far corner of the factory floor. Officers followed quickly, flashlights cutting through shadows until they reached a storage locker pressed against the wall. The dog barked furiously, scratching at the metal. The locker was opened. Inside was a small stack of identical envelopes, sealed tightly. Each contained copies of the same blueprints, each prepared to be moved out unnoticed. It became clear someone had been smuggling classified designs out of the factory piece by piece. The worker had stumbled into it unknowingly, carrying the ones his father had hidden long ago, while someone else had used him as a cover. The suspicion shifted rapidly. Supervisors ordered a full sweep, questioning who had access to both the machines and the storage lockers. Records pointed toward a contractor who had recently joined maintenance crews. Within hours, investigators confirmed he had been under surveillance before, linked to attempts at stealing industrial designs. The worker, though shaken, was cleared. His only mistake was not turning in the documents sooner. His father's legacy, though hidden, had indirectly exposed a plot much larger than anyone realized. And at the center of it all, the K9 had refused to let him inside, sensing something was wrong long before humans could see it. The factory, once clouded by suspicion, now erupted in relief. The worker was escorted back, his name cleared, his co-workers patting him on the back as truth settled in. The officers praised the dog, who finally relaxed, sitting calmly with its handler, tail wagging slightly. The dots connected neatly: the suspicious behavior, the hidden documents, the unexplained package, the photograph linking past to present, and the smuggling ring exposed in the end. The worker, though shaken, felt pride. His father's warnings had not gone unheard. The documents were finally in the right hands and the factory's integrity restored. The ending was not only relief but justice. And as the K9 walked out beside its handler, head high, it carried the quiet triumph of having protected both people and truth, reminding everyone why trust in these dogs is never misplaced. Stories like this remind us how a single moment can change everything. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that like button, subscribe right now, and be here the moment the next mystery unfolds.